The Sentinel is known to be reliable, fearless, disciplined, consistent, courageous, motivated, and skillful.
So do what you feel passionate about. Take chances.
All these qualities start from the mind. Your mind can be your worst enemy or your most powerful weapon.
The world becomes your library to help you become better at your craft.
Is this the dagger?
Learn how to achieve greatness and tap into the Sentinel Mindset.
This episode is brought to you by The Arena. The Arena focuses on helping law enforcement and security professionals achieve their ultimate work experience, curriculum, and fitness goals. Visit thearenatoronto.com.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this fantastic, amazing day. I have a very special guest here today, and this is a guest that I actually had the pleasure of listening to an incredible, important topic, so much so that I thought I had to have her on the show. And I'm talking today about Anne Bermingham. Now, Anne is the president of 2WA Consulting, Inc. It's a consulting firm that is 25 years of operation. Their firm focuses on helping people and companies change by helping leaders and others in 4 areas that I have here: to lead large-scale change initiatives, addressing the people issues and articulating the culture shifts needed to be successful, to improve the functioning of work teams, to enhance workplace environments by addressing conflict and unclear goals and priorities, and to clarify decision-making between different levels of management. Now, Anne's background is an applied social psychologist, where she takes the theories and research about how normal people behave in groups or organizational settings and applies these insights to organizations. She presents practical tips in a way that you can easily apply the insights in the workplace. Anne, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
So how are you doing today, first of all? You just came in. It's a little bit cloudy and gray outside today.
It's a little cloudy and gray, but It's the beginning of the holiday season, and I'm feeling great.
Amazing. So I read your bio, okay? What inspired you to kind of choose this line of industry to get into, where you literally, in my opinion, help others? You help organizations. What inspired you to do so?
Well, I spent some time working for my father's construction company, and in the process, he was very interested in me taking on a management leadership role. But what I found the most fascinating was watching the communication and the connections between different groups, and sometimes watching the engineers spend weeks putting together a bid and then doing a very quick handoff to the foreman, and then hearing a couple weeks later how frustrated they were that the job wasn't going exactly as they intended.
Right.
And I just found that so much of the social psychology I had studied had some really interesting ways of applying it to business. So maybe a little bit to my dad's disappointment, I said, I'm going to go off and be a organizational consultant, and I'll come back and help you anytime for free.
Okay.
And that's
Amazing.
what I did.
Amazing. And you're very good at it. I'm going to get into that. Before I do, I'm just going to do a quick scan here. And I do want to make sure it's one of those things that maybe call it ADHD, where I just did I push the buttons? I usually have one of my guys in here, but he's not here today. So anyways, everything is perfect. Your voice sounds fantastic. And this is all going to get cut off, but I want to jump into the next one here. So you had an opportunity to come to our group of people and speak on an incredible topic. I'm going to say it's incredible because in our organization, Anne, we have many managers and many supervisors. And one of the things that we really preach upon is servant leadership. And I just love what it means, the ability to help, inspire, motivate, uplift an individual to get the most out of them. However, in a journey of having someone grow in their role as a leader, they're going to face difficult situations, and not everything is always going to be easy. And what I've seen in my experience is that the hard conversations sometimes are completely avoided, so the problem never really gets rectified. Hence, when we listen to this topic, the effective delivery of difficult conversations, I just loved it. And you actually also did some exercise with us to show just how simple it is, which I also want you to do today with me. Okay.
That's great.
Okay.
I'd love to.
But tell me now, just because we're going to kind of unearth a little bit of this, because by the way, everyone, Anne does this. It's part of her business model. So you're just going to get a little bit of a taste of what this is. However, if you wanted something like this more in your organization, there is more of an extensive, element side to it, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So tell me, how, in your opinion, because you see this all the time, How often are people just paralyzed from having a difficult conversation?
More often than not.
Okay.
We find that a lot of organizations' issues are really left to fester. And we know that from when we get brought in even to coach someone. And the organization will say, oh, we've told them many times before. And then when we have a very direct conversation about the issue, they're like, no one's ever told me this.
Wow.
So I think that it's often avoided, or it's just done so poorly that it just goes over someone's head and they miss the message of what it is that they need to change.
Do you think people that need the talking, do you think that they would appreciate the talking opposed to not hearing nothing at all and almost like guessing what they got to do?
Absolutely. And there's a lot of data to support that. You know, employees are looking for regular, and I mean daily, if not weekly, ideas of how do I constantly improve. I know you're an inspiring leader who's always looking to constantly improve, and people are looking for that. And so whether it's something that you're doing that is poor or even just average, but even if you do something that's good, people want good feedback so they can learn how to be great, to exceed expectation. And we find all the time people are very hungry for that and very disappointed that they don't get it on a regular basis.
It's almost unfair. Let me explain to you what I mean by the word unfair. So I used to work for the city of Toronto. So my background is in the social work field. I was part of a union, Local 79, QP Local 79. And one of the things, because I also had an alternate switch, meaning I was part of the union, but I also represented leadership and management. So I held an alternate rate. But one of the things that I would always hear whenever an employee was facing disciplinary measures and their union rep came in, they were saying, did you give the employee the opportunity to correct? Did you educate the employee on how to do the job? And if those two things were very clearly defined, it's almost like their sentence was released. It's like, that's not fair. You got to reset this. Now, from what I'm hearing from you is, if an employee, and again, I also share this, if an employee is not doing something to match expectation, if they're not being corrected or shown how to, just on those two layers alone, it's not fair that you kind of lay the hammer down on them, because how can you expect them to change?
It is absolutely not fair, because it's a mystery and they don't know. And second of all, as we explored a little bit, there's a lot of reasons why people don't always do what they're supposed to do. And so often it is that management, or at least has a part to play in helping to be effective. And, you know, the part of job of managers is to helping your staff improve and inspire. And we can't expect people to do it in a bubble. We can't expect people to do it with a blindfold on or without a mirror.
Okay.
And I think your managers and leaders really have to mirror that, and not only what you aren't doing so well, but also telling you what you're doing really well so that you can constantly improve. There's a lot of research that'll show that if you take something that you're good at and you learn how to get great at it, your overall leadership effectiveness will go up tenfold. And so there's a lot of value in learning both how to get better on the things you're good, but also correcting those places where you're not meeting expectations, you're not aligned with the values, you're not doing exactly what you hope and of your staff.
In your research, would you say that the reason why a manager or supervisor may have the difficult situations because of how awkward it may make them feel?
Certainly, people tell me that that feeling of awkwardness, that worrying about hurting someone's feelings, come and play. But I've actually been told that the most often that people just don't know how to do it. So when you don't know how to do it, it can be messy, or it can be ineffective, or it does blow up. And that's why people don't want to do.
Isn't that interesting?
I'll tell you a little secret in social psychology. If you don't want to know anything else about social psychology, just know that people do what they're rewarded for. So if I get feedback that tells me how much you appreciate the extra mile that I did, I'm going to do it again. If I left early for work, I left a whole bunch of work that someone else had to finish. I come in the next day, someone's finished all my work, and I made it to my kid's baseball game early, then I'm going to probably do that again. So, feedback is such a critical motivator, is such a critical predictor of the behavior you're going to get.
Is there a recommended dose of feedback for either positive or negative in a general scope?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
5 to 10 pieces of feedback a week a manager should be providing. Now, that's not per person, but if you are a good manager or leader, once or twice a day, you should find an opportunity to either give someone some positive feedback about something you saw. That could be a direct report, it could be a peer, it could be a boss, or something that could be corrected. There isn't a ratio of how much good and bad. I generally say be balanced. I often challenge managers and leaders to make a list of all the people that you that report to you and just start to note your patterns. How often do you give each person feedback? Is it positive? Is it corrective? Are you balanced? There's no way that anyone is all good and doesn't deserve some feedback of something that they did that's good and how to do it great.
Okay. And through your research, and I'm only going to say it because it just makes sense to me, that by giving this feedback on a weekly basis, you will see gains in your organization, not only for those that are getting a better idea what the job entails, but also individuals that are doing an excellent job and just need to you just need to validate them.
And even more so than that, I agree with you 100%, but people see that you care. People see that you actually stopped and observed. And people often tell me that is almost as impactful as the words.
Interesting. We've heard stories, and we don't have to kind of pinpoint who these leaders are in the world. But, for example, putting out memos, expecting people to work 3 times harder, or, just have this very different shift where, you almost feel like a slave to the work. In this day and age right now, I mean, more than ever, I was telling you this very briefly, work-life balance is a big piece right now of our talks. And, I think people are trying to put 2 and 2 together, almost like saying, wait a second, I'm spending more time at work than I am with my family. I've just lost my family because of my commitment. And these are examples that I hear people say. So to me, I think it's so important that, when we validate people for the hard work when they do go above and beyond, that they understand this is not what's expected, but thank you so much. And you're right. I think you 100% get people to be more involved because they're heard.
And I was just reading some research, not ours, but just reading some research 2 days ago about people that get regular gratitude for what they do will happily work harder, will jump in and help on that one-off shift where it's needed because they feel that they get such regular gratitude.
So I'm going to give you an example. This actually happened a couple of years ago. So I remember it vividly. So one of our senior executives, he would regularly see that whenever someone did something good, I would always go in and thank them. And thank you so much. And he would pull me aside, he goes, listen, what are you doing? He goes, you're going to make their heads swell. He says, you're thanking them for something that they're expected to do. So why are you doing that? You just have to understand, because then they're going to create a God complex where they think they're better than this and blah, blah, blah. So I remember he would tell me that, but I always rejected that. It was very hard for me because if I feel someone is making me feel something because of what they're doing, I feel they should be, rewarded with some praise. But
I would agree 100%.
Yeah.
But I would say it depends on how you do it.
Okay.
If it's just thank you, great job, and they kind of know you always do that, you kind of do it in the same way, and so you almost have a pattern to it. And without going on to say anything more, it might not be as effective as you hope. But the idea of you see something and you effectively give the feedback about it, that's fantastic. And I 100% support you doing that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So now we talked about feedback, and we're going to talk about how we do it. But before we do that, you mentioned about 5 to 10 bits of feedback per week, roughly. Is there a timeline on this feedback? And I can tell you by doing your course, I know the answer a little bit to here, or your session. I know when I speak to people, even my wife hears me on the phone sometimes because I do take work at home, which, I have to always kind of be very careful how much it crosses over to the work life, into the family life. But I spend time with people, sometimes more time than I should. And when I heard your examples and how quick and short they were, I thought this is like, I need to start doing this because it'll just buy me more time in my day. Is there a guideline of the amount of time you should put towards providing feedback?
Do you mean in terms of how long it should take, or do you mean how quickly from the time the behavior happened?
Well, that's a great question as well. We'll follow into, but more like when you're actually in the process of giving feedback, both positive and negative, should it be drawn out? Meaning, as in, is it a point to make it nice, quick, to the point?
Quick, to the point, meaningful, on point. And particularly, as we'll get into with constructive, that's often where people start to ramble and then they get off point and then they start to say things that wasn't exactly what they meant to say, and then they cause a more defensive reaction. In both cases, I would challenge you to be able to give a concrete piece of feedback. Shouldn't take more than a minute, and it'll be a very meaningful minute for that individual. And that then they can soak and they can enjoy that, or they can soak and they can reflect on it. Does not need to be a long, drawn-out conversation.
Okay, perfect. Could we do an example?
Sure.
Okay, so let me give you the example, and then you tell me how you would deal with this. So I'm the employee now that comes into work. I'm usually late. Okay, but it's very important that I come into work on time for a briefing, a security briefing. If I don't come to that security briefing, I will miss very important information about what we're supposed to be doing for that specific event. I also have a difficulty in once I'm posted in my position, not staying in the position which is static and kind of wandering. This is also causing access points to be unmanned, which could cause breaches that could create more issues. So in a situation like that, how would you have the conversation?
Great. Okay, I could break it down to a couple different things.
Okay.
One is I'd have two different conversations. I probably wouldn't try and wrap the two things together.
Okay.
Unless there's a time-sensitive reason too.
Okay.
I also wouldn't speak to you about your multiple times being late. I would start catching you every time that you're late, and I would speak to you then. So let's take that one as the first example.
Okay.
So when you go to give feedback, there's 4 steps. You describe the behavior, not a series of behaviors, the behavior. You describe its impact on you, impact on others, and if it's a piece of constructive feedback like this, what you need the person to stop or start doing. So I would say, Constantine, I need to speak to you about what happened today. I saw you come into the briefing and you were 12 minutes late. And that is very frustrating for me. It's frustrating for me because it means that you're missing key information about the event. And either someone has to take additional time afterwards to bring you up to speed, but it also may not be the same quality. And that puts the quality that we put on our customers at risk. I need you from here on to come and be here before the briefing starts, not once it has begun.
Okay. So that's very firm. That's very to the point. It's very clear. And I would say at that point, okay, no problem. I got you. I apologize. I won't let it happen again.
Well, you're very nice. Some people would tell me all the reasons that happened.
Okay.
And if they do, I'd say, I appreciate the bus was late and your dog threw up and so on and so forth. But what I'm telling you is that I need you from here on in to build some extra time then, because going forward, I don't want to see another situation where you were late for the briefing. So you can listen to the excuses, but the key message I want you to leave if you were the employee is the do different message.
Okay, so I love that. When I was with the city, we had a thing called the do's and don'ts of a supervisor. And one of the things that it would start was, one of the categories was the disciplinary process. Stage 1 of the disciplinary process was just having a conversation of expectation. So right now, I'm very, very, I understand very clear what your message is right now. And it's, to me, I've understood that. The second stage, according to the disciplinary do's and don'ts of this book, would be now, okay, if I do it again, well, now there's a consequence. Is that in line with how you would expect it as well? Like if someone just listened to you and they did it again the next day, would that also be in line to say, okay, well, now I'm going to tell you, I told you this yesterday, you did it again, I'm going to have to write you up for this. Is that something that would be in line as well with how you would look at it?
Yes, it would. I'd probably put a couple of caveats on that. If I typically would say give feedback You could repeat it maybe one more time. After that, we can move into what I would say is a much more disciplinary conversation.
Okay.
But I also love the fact that you raised expectations.
Okay.
So I do spend a lot of time with managers saying, if you really want to have a strong team, be clear on the expectations. In fact, there's a great study out of Harvard that says there's 8 things that employees want from you. And number 1 is tell me the rules and tell me how you want to behave. And so employees want to hear the expectations. And yes, you've got corporate values, that's some of the expectations, but the expectations are the way we run our briefings. I want everyone here at least 5 minutes before it begins. So when it starts, everyone's ready. Expectation is that when you are on a job site, you're not wandering around, you're covering the access points. Expectation is that when we have a new person, you do this, this, and this to help them get oriented. So I spend a lot of time with managers helping them develop, say, 10 expectations or even just 5 that they can articulate that say, this is how we operate, and then start getting those managers to now give feedback, both the positive as well as the constructive, to reinforce when you're in line with the expectations. So when you have expectations and feedback, that will improve performance more so than just giving feedback without having ever clarified the expectations.
Okay, that's fantastic. Do you find, Anne, that this takes like anything that's new or anything that's getting introduced as a skill that you need to do your job? Do you find it takes practice? Like, is there a way someone can practice this? And I know you, for example, I just noticed you were writing things down. And for someone that I would classify as an expert, right, you still are using tools to write things down. And what that's showing me is that you're listening to me, right? And also it shows that you're trying to like really like dissect. So to me, like the stuff that you do to write things down, do you encourage people that are doing this to put themselves in a situation where it becomes routine for them?
Yes, absolutely. So there's 4 steps of the feedback formula as we talked about. And when I'm giving feedback, I'm either in my mind going through 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm literally touching my fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4 to make sure I've covered all 4 points, or I write them down. The key of writing it down is that it helps me strip out judgment. And what do I mean by that? If I instead had said to you, you know, when you were inconsiderate and showed up late for the briefing, that's a judgment. And you might then get very upset with me and say, Anne, I was not being inconsiderate, etc. And that's our natural sort of human way as we go with judgment. So I usually write it down to make sure I've stripped it of judgment. And I look at the words to say, are those clearly behaviors, something you did that you can say, yes, I did arrive 12 minutes late for the briefing, that you can see what you did. If I say you were inconsiderate, you were disorganized, you were not of the quality that we expect, those are all judgments. And now we're not going to be having, now we've got clouded in all sorts of defensiveness and upset that's not going to work very well. And it's exactly the same for the positive feedback. So if you don't mind, I'll come back to your example of thank you.
Yes.
So tell me something that someone has done that was really outstanding, and let's turn your thank you into a piece of feedback.
Okay, so one of our operatives, security operatives, was working at a hospital, and a woman arrived, and her water just broke in the atrium, and he very quickly was able to get them into the area where they can get settled in. Because the husband was in much distress seeing all this happened, he stayed with them, and he didn't have to do that right into their room, to the point where he did not even to go on his break so he can provide them the comfort. He stuck around with them. They had their baby. They were very successful. The next day, the individual, the father, sends a message to us saying that individual, he didn't want to give us his name. He was absolutely incredible. He helped us. He gave us comfort. I wouldn't expect this treatment at a 5-star hotel, but I felt like I was at a 5-star hotel. I was in a hospital. So that was some feedback that we got. That was
okay. How did it make you feel? What was the impact on you?
I couldn't stop smiling because on top of that, he also wanted to reward this individual with not only just him, but he wanted to reward all the staff that were working that day a game to the Raptors. So to me, I was like, oh my God, this guy's life was so impacted so impacted, like maybe even named his kid after him. I don't know, who knows. But he was so impacted by this experience that he felt time to take the time to stop. Remember, his kid just was born yesterday, so I'm pretty sure they're going through a lot of emotions, but it impacted him. So it made me feel like this is the work that we need to maintain. This is what we need to continue pushing out. This is what gives us the X factor, going above and beyond. And that made me feel very, very grateful.
Fantastic. So, what a lot of people do in that situation is they, are thrilled and happy, just like you are, as you tell me that. And they go and they say, thank you so much. Like, I'm just so thrilled. But let me try and tell you how I would give feedback in that situation using the same 4 steps of describing the behavior, impact on you, impact on the customer, keep doing. So I would say to that individual, I could certainly start with, thank you so much. I got to tell you, I got the most amazing phone call from the people that you helped yesterday. And they told me about how when that woman's water broke, that you quickly got them into a private place and you helped them to ensure that they could kind of stay settled. But you stayed with them and you kept them calm, and the father was naturally pretty concerned. And it to them, the impact on them was they said, you gave us comfort, you gave us calm, you made the whole experience so much better. And as when you heard that, as you said, it made you smile. It made you just feel like this is why we do this in our company. This is why we're special. We really provide that extra. And I got to tell you, I just want you to keep going the extra mile and being what is truly a poster child for what we want in our employees. So thank you.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And to me, I felt that too. Even though we're acting this out, I felt that as well, hearing that. And I was thinking, as you're talking, I'm feeling my mind like I'm being recognized. That's what was going through my mind. I'm being recognized. And that would empower me. And I think any good news is always good news to hear something of that end. Absolutely.
And one of the things that we find is that so often managers get into patterns. So they might be thankful. And, and on a Friday when they're heading out, they might go around and say, thanks, everyone, great week. But that's not the same. It's not the same because, one, there's a pattern. And it's like, well, he always says that before he leaves on a Friday.
Interesting.
And two, they didn't know, it didn't say anything specific, And so, it's the same words every single time. It's the same concept. But when you really listen and you notice, I agree. It makes you feel like really special and truly that they saw something.
Yeah, it makes you almost want to be like, man, I'm going to do even more. You know what I mean? Like, because that's how it's a great feeling. I want to stick on tone and delivery. Okay. So when you were let's go back to the negative side, because obviously positives, you're always going to get a positive reaction because someone's happy, they want to share it. And I mean, I would hope that anyone getting positive information, you would seem that you're happy about the information. It's not like robotic, like you said, like, oh, yeah, he's just saying that. He says that every Friday at 2. When you're delivering a very firm message to correct, I noticed when you were talking to me that you were firm, but you were respectful. You weren't yelling at me. You didn't make me feel like I was this little small dot. I was just focusing on your words, on what I did that was wrong, right? So is there a suggested tone and body language that you should have when you're delivering these messages?
Great question. I think in terms of tone, you're absolutely right. It's calm. It's not emotional. If you are still feeling emotional, as often as, take a day, take half a day, get it sorted out so you can present it with a very neutral words, and so that you aren't high emotion. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, to be able to do that is critical.
Okay, that's very helpful. That's very helpful. And to me...
if I may, I might say one other thing. The other thing is to say in your mind, and there's really 2 reasons to give feedback. You're either reinforcing what someone did really well, or you're trying to correct. And I love the verb correct, because it's not you screwed up and I'm going to take you down. And my intent is to try and help you so that good becomes great, or that oops doesn't happen again. So the tone, and sometimes I'll even say this, I'm going to give you some feedback. It is constructive, so you may not like it. But the reason I'm doing this is because you are a great employee, And I want you to correct yourself in this area so you continue to be a better and better employee.
No, that's good.
And so making sure it's clear that that's my purpose, not I need someone to bully and I'm going to tell you what you didn't do so well today because that'll make me feel good.
Okay, no, that's fantastic. I think also, and I wanted to bring this up to see your experience from this, leading by example. And here's what I mean by that. Have you ever dealt with situations where leadership is trying to correct a situation? However, the leadership is also failing by the same advice that they're giving. For example, I've always told my people, if you're trying to correct someone for being late and you're always late, you have no legs to stand on. You're a hypocrite, right? And it makes your job difficult now because you're under that magnifying glass. People are going to look at you and measure you in a very different way. Have you had experiences or situations where people were doing like almost guilty of their own advice, and how can they navigate around trying to now provide constructive advice to an individual that could say, hey, you don't do it. Why should I?
I'm sorry to say I've seen it happen hundreds of times.
Okay.
The way that I would overcome it, as I said earlier, you need a mirror, and feedback is mirror. I mean, you wouldn't go out in the morning dressed without checking in the mirror how you look. Well, at work, we need mirrors too, and we don't always know how we come across. Yes, there might be some things where I can maybe more obviously know being late is not good, but there might be other things that I do where I think I'm being really positive and appreciative, and others are like, oh, it's such a same pattern. She says the same words. And so I really encourage to be able to say, as your senior leadership, who's giving them feedback? And on a high performance team, the peers and your executive team should be able to give each other feedback. That even to the president, to the owner, people should be soliciting. And so that maybe brings me to another point, which is a really good leader ask for feedback. But I'm sure you found in this business that if you say, I'm open to feedback, give me feedback, most people don't.
Right.
Because they're
scared.
like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But if you want to make it work, say, I have been really trying to improve my delegation skills, and I've been working on doing a variety of different things to improve how I delegate. I would so welcome feedback from you about either what I'm doing well or what I could do differently. If you give them something specific, you will get the feedback. So if you want to ask the feedback about, so I often will do in organizations. I just did a 360 for a whole bunch of leaders. I really admired that they're willing to do this. They rolled out their values, and the 4 top leaders then said, we want to do a 360 survey and get feedback from all sorts of staff about how well we each model those values. So, set up some mirrors, find some ways, whether it's you asking for it or using some other tools. But a great leader looks in the mirror, and I'm glad that you're thinking that way.
No, absolutely. To me, I actually have done that many times. I'm always very critical of myself, but I also want to have that person tell me, because I truly want it. But I think your delivery, how you said that, is perfect, because I've done that before. Listen, tell me, just give me your tell me how I am. How can I? And sometimes I can see it, so they're scared, like, oh my God, if I say something, I might lose my job. And I think the way you phrased it and it is perfect, because it really says, wow, he's looking for a very specific bit of advice that,
It's kind of like I'll say to my husband, how do you like that red jacket that I'm putting on versus my other one? And that's what I want feedback on, not how do I look? And then he tells me, well, really, you should lose that 20 pounds. And that's like, I didn't want to hear that.
Yeah.
I want to know about this. So ask things to which you genuinely want the feedback.
Okay.
And I think you'll get it.
Okay, I love that. You also have, I know we talked about the 4 Ps. So again, the feedback formula, the step 1, describe a specific, not general behavior. Step 2, describe its impact on you. Step 3, describe its impact on the team, task, and organization. And step 4, state what you want the person to keep, stop, or start doing. So we've gone over that. You also have an area about the 5 Ps. Do you want to go over that a little bit?
Sure. So you were asking earlier what happens if I've given feedback to an individual who's late for the briefing, and then 2 days later it happens again. And I might repeat the feedback. But certainly if it happens a third time, or certainly if it's a very important thing that you really just can't even tolerate it happening 2 times, I moved to something called the 5 Ps. And the 5 Ps is what I call script, for a difficult conversation. These same 5 Ps can use for any message of change. In this case, the message of change we want is for your employee to change their behavior. So the 5 Ps are: you describe the problem and why status quo is not an option. And that status quo is not an option is critical for 2 reasons. Unless people understand that, they typically won't change. And a lot of times people think it's kind of like a nice to do that you're suggesting I be on time for a briefing, as opposed to unacceptable, cannot be tolerated any further. So we're having a conversation to figure out how you are going to change this so that you can be successful. And I can tell you, when you were saying earlier, most cases, managers are there. We should fix this and we should improve this. And it is sounds so optional.
Okay, yeah.
So that first P is really important. The second P is you describe the picture. So you imagine that the person is, I'm going to use air quotes and say fixed.
Yes.
And so you describe what would it look like if they were acting the way you want. You know, what I'd like to see is not you walking in the door at 9 o'clock when the briefing starts, coming 5 minutes earlier, taking your coat off, saying hello to everyone. So you're sitting down, you've got your pen and paper, and you are listening. That's when I want to look. So in the picture, the second P, you describe what it is that you want to see. And the great thing is you then say to the individual, so what I want is for you to go away and to come back tomorrow with a plan of what you're going to start doing. I want commitments, specific actions that you're going to do. And the fourth P is if you need a part to play, I want to hear what part you're going to play if there's something you need me to do. And so you really are describing the problem and the picture and inviting them to create a plan. You create space for them to come back. Do not let them just say the first thing on their mind. I want you to come back with actions you're going to commit to. If there's something you want me to consider doing to support you, that's great. So that's plan and part. And then at that second meeting, you agree on a short time frame with which you're going to monitor the final P, progress. So you're going to say, Anne, well, I want to meet you again in 2 weeks' time, and we're going to monitor how well you're doing on these actions. And I hope at that meeting I'm saying, my goodness, this has improved tremendously and I'm thrilled. Or if I'm saying, gosh, this hasn't improved, then believe me, we're moving into a far more serious conversation.
Okay. So this has been very, very eye-opening. I mean, again, I had the pleasure of hearing some of this, and I'm so glad you're able to articulate this. And these are just, like I'm going to say, the icings on the cake for someone to kind of continue and move forward and say, look, and I want to bring you into our organization. I want you to help us in this situation. We're having a very hard time right now trying to manage our people. We've had some of our leadership that may not necessarily, be squashing the fire, but they're actually putting fuel to the fire. How do they find you? How do they get a hold of you? And is this something that you do with them?
Absolutely. So a couple different things. We run a program called Managing People. We have 5 sessions. We're starting another one in a couple of months' time. And so those are 5 sessions, very practical, time in between, so you have to practice.
Okay.
That's the light end. But we come into organizations all the time and in a customized way help the senior management or other managers to be more effective. And so how do they find us? We're on, we have a website like everyone else, 2WA Consulting, www.2waconsulting.com. And we would be thrilled to have a conversation and find out a little bit more of what people are looking to improve.
Okay. You also, I remember you told me you have a podcast. You want to do a shout out to your podcast so people can listen to some content as well and get those nuggets?
Yes. It's also located on our website.
Okay. Amazing. And is it called something, or it's just the podcast tied to 2WA?
The podcast tied to 2WA.
Amazing. Before we wrap, is there any last nuggets or words of wisdom, whatever it is, that you'd like to share before we wrap?
I would say that think about how important feedback is. You've got children?
Yes, I do.
So think about how important
Teenagers.
feedback is to them, right? And you couldn't parent without feedback. And you wouldn't wait until their birthday and sit down and say, let's review the last year. And let's discuss, your behavior and Nana's where you were on your phone and you weren't paying attention, unacceptable. You wouldn't do that. And yet in organizations, we somehow think we're supposed to save up the feedback for an annual performance review. So I'd say my final nugget is remember that regular and random feedback creates high performance. And so go forth and give small, little, meaningful nuggets that show you observe, show that you care, that reinforce and correct, and you'll be thrilled with the results.
Amazing. And that to me is the signs of an incredible leader if they can do that and do that effectively. I want to thank you for coming to the show today. I'm actually very much looking forward to going down the feedback journey even more so, but being even more attentive to making sure that the right things are said that will create the most amount of positive impact. So thank you for sharing that. It's been absolutely fantastic. I cannot wait for people to hear about this. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time and your commitment to always trying to be constantly improving as a leader. That's very inspiring.
Thank you so much. Have a fantastic day, ladies and gentlemen. And once again, if there's anything that you need for your organization, we will put all the links below. Have a great week, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
This podcast is brought to you by Executive Protection Lifestyle Canada. Make sure to drop by next week and don't forget to subscribe.